If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell icon to get the latest updates.
Okay, so let's start our session today. I'll share my screen. So we'll continue our discussion on data model. Yesterday we created one, hope you can see my screen, right?
Yes, it's visible.
Yep. So yesterday we created one data model. Just let me quickly recap what we did yesterday. So in edit data model, so we created one data model here, and then this is the data model description. And here we can say whether it is a flex or reuse mode. Okay, and we are adding some prefix and package. Okay, after that we created our first entity, Z product. Okay, so now when you are creating any new entity, okay, under a data model, you need to categorize whether it's a type 1 or type 2 or type 3, type 4. Okay, so what we have done is we created it as a type 1. So basically type 1 and type 4 are like having a parent and child type of relationship. So for a particular master data, you need to identify what is your type 1 entity, and you can have one type 1 at any point of time. Okay, and so that just like in material master you have a Mara table as a your header table, right? So in the same way we consider in the data model, so corresponding to Mara table, so there is a type 1 entity in data model. Okay, and all other entities like your plant data, sales data, everything will become like a type 4. Okay, so the same way here in our case also we just took one material and a plant example. So I created this as a type 1 entity. Okay, and that implant will become a type 4 entity for us. So when you select any entity as a type 1 entity, so you need to input this data element. The reason is this entity in the generated staging tables, so this entity will become the key attribute in the table. So that's the reason for the key attribute we need to mention the data element. That's the reason we just mentioned the data element over here. And after that, we also discussed about something called key assignment. So there are four different behaviors. It depends on the settings that you choose over here, whether it is external or internal, even whether it is external also, whether it will allow you to edit further, or else in case of internal, it generates that one, but whether it will allow you further to edit that. So all the behavior, by looking at the description, you can easily understand the key behavior on the UI. Okay, so yesterday I showed you that material example where it added some internal key, and you can edit the date, the key. You can replace that with some other value as well. So that is a behavior. And after all, we saw how the staging table get created for your type 1 entity. So let me just show you quickly. USMD underscore data underscore model is a program name. And when you run this particular program with your data model, you'll get to see all the staging tables for entity wise. Okay, and this is the physical name of the staging table that got created. So once you double click, it will take you to the test C11 T code, where it will show you all the list of attributes under your data model, a type 1 entity. Okay, so this is the entity name itself, which added as a key field. And this by default for every staging table, it will get added your active or inactive, whether to tell you that whether it's a record or active record or inactive record. And then you see these three are the direct attributes that we added under that particular entity. So those attributes will become kind of non-key attributes at your table level, and created by, changed by, automatically the MDG framework, it will add these fields when it generates the staging table, when it creates a staging table in the backend. So such tables, right? Whatever this is a generated table. It's not created by anyone, right? So you are not supposed to do any edits to this particular table. Any changes that has to happen to this particular table. Let's say I need one more field for this one. So you need to work always on the data model level, not at the table level. You add up or you delete whatever the attributes or do all the changes, and finally activate your data model. Then the changes should reflect over here. Okay, so that is the thumb rule when you are working on data model. And after that, let's explore today some more settings over here at the type 1 entity level. There is something called language dependent text. Okay, so when you select this one, so before this, I'll just show you how it in the standard. I'll go to create material. Create material. Okay, here, for example, I wanted to maintain the descriptions for this particular material in multiple languages. So that's where you can see there is a section called descriptions, where for the same material, you can provide the description in multiple languages. Let's say test one, and for the same material, uh, you can also maintain the description in other languages as well, something like this. Okay, so the same behavior, this is not something new in MDG. You also have in MM01 also, you have this flexibility where you can maintain the material descriptions in multiple languages. So let me show you here. FERT. If you go to, so whatever the default description, the description you maintain over here, this will be considered as a description in Logan language. Okay, and after this, if for example you wanted to maintain the descriptions in other languages, you can click on additional data button here. So this already whatever you entered in the previous field, so that consider it as a default language, and you can also maintain the descriptions in other languages as well. Okay, now where this getter gets stored, if you maintain these descriptions in multiple languages, forget about MDG, in general in material master case, where this data gets stored, any idea the table name for this?
MAKT.
Yeah, so MAKT. In MAKT, it stores along with your material number, language key, you can see the descriptions. Okay, so you can so this the data gets stored into this one. Now, for example, in the same way, I wanted to, in MDG also, SAP provided this flexibility where you can maintain these descriptions in multiple languages. Now, this data, when once I submit this request, just like your other Mara material attribute side, so this data also first should get stored into your staging table. Okay, and at the time of activation, this data will move to your MAKT table, but before that it should get stored into some staging table in MDG, right? So for that one, what happens is, for any master data, for a type 1 entity, if you have such kind of descriptions that you need to maintain in multiple languages, so you can select this checkbox. You no need to create again separate entity and everything for these descriptions. It's a property of your parent one. It's not only for material, generally in any master data. For example, if at all you wanted to maintain the descriptions in multiple languages, in MDG side, it gives you a flexibility where you can choose the language dependent text. It's an optional setting. Okay, that's yesterday we didn't select, but still our staging, we saw one staging table. But now this is an optional. If you have such kind of requirement, you can actually select this checkbox and provide the lengths for each of these descriptions. Long text how much, medium text how much, and short text how much, the length. Okay, so once you maintain these settings, save your entity changes. Okay, go back, and because we did some changes, obviously you need to activate your data model. So this time I think it should be, if the value is different, but it is not refreshed once you go out of this transaction. And again, when you open here, it will say it's a different, okay, but that's fine. So what you can do is you can just simply activate your data model. Okay, so once this data model is active, okay, we'll talk about this warning message today. Okay, but okay, the data model is active. Now I'll go and look at my staging table. What happened to that? Okay, so the same report I'm just executing with the data model. See, there is one more additional staging table got created here. For the same entity, type 1 entity, there is a check table that got created yesterday, which has all the attributes. And there is something called text table also created. The type you can, by looking at the type, you can see text table. Okay. And this is the table name. So once you open this table name, you can see the language as one of the key and your material as another key. Of course, by default, USMD active will be there. It's a by default one. And you can maintain the long, medium, short descriptions in multiple languages. So basically, it gives you a flexibility. That means on the UI, whatever the data that you store here in different languages, different descriptions, this data gets stored into this particular staging table. So for type 1 entity, always the staging table will get created if you select that checkbox. Okay, the same behavior even if you open data model also, material master data model. So, and this setting will be applicable only for your type 1. Okay, so you see here, this is the check table that is which will have all your attributes. Under this is your type 1. The entity name is the material, which is a type 1 in data model. Okay, and this is a text table that got created. Okay, so likewise, it creates one additional text table when you select that particular checkbox. If at all you have a requirement, otherwise when you're, but for the standard objects, don't change any of these settings. For MMBP or else finance or any objects, right? We never ever we touch this one. This is when you are creating a custom object, so I'm explaining the purpose of each of these settings. Okay, so this is one. And similarly, attachments and sets also there. So attachments means basically it generates one more bunch of two staging tables, which will use to store your attachments while you are creating a request. Okay, so let me show you here. While you are creating a request, you wanted to attach some documents. Okay, so that kind of the document data gets stored into the generated staging tables, but I'm not selecting this. We don't use mostly these settings at all. Okay, so you can just simply ignore only the language dependent text. Sometimes if at all there is a need, then for your custom object you can actually make use of this setting. Now after this, coming the next one is a search help. So on this UI, material creation UI, you see for this particular material field, there is a search help. You can search the materials based on material description or else based on all these different parameters. You can see there are some different options where you can actually search your materials. So the key master for the, so whatever the, you can assign a search help over here. Basically here you can assign a search help so that this search help will be assigned to your the key field. By default, what happens, the search help will be picked up from the data element that is associated with your let's say for example, for material matter, so we'll be assigning the search helps right here. Search help, you can see this is a search help name s underscore mat1. So by default it will take the search help associated from your data element, but I wanted to override that behavior. I don't wanted to take it from the data element. I want the set custom search help which I wanted to assign. Then you can create that in S11 that equal to your search help, and you can come back and add it over here. Okay, so after this, this is basically whatever the fields, the descriptions are there for that one. If at all you wanted to give the field descriptions differently, that you can actually maintain the descriptions over here. We can ignore, actually, we never use this. Search help is one of the attribute that you may use it. Okay, and this language dependent text. After this, another important field that we need to understand is temporary keys. Okay, so if you observe this one, whenever I create a new material, system proposes one number. Okay, and before that it also prefixes something called dollar symbol. Okay, and if at all I'm creating a material in my directly in ECC, it just generates this number, but there is no dollar symbol, nothing. Okay, and even if you look at the number range also, here the series is 1000522, but whereas here you see the series, it is 241. Okay, so what is this purpose of this temporary key? Okay, now let's look at here. This is your MDG system where you have your the ERP or ECC layer. Okay, so this is your MDG. Before MDG, like let's say for example, I wanted to create a material using MM01 transaction. Okay, so then what happens when when you are trying to create a material using MM01 transaction, system will look at, based on your material type, it will look at what is the number range object that is configured in your SPRO. SPRO. So you might be maintaining different number range objects for different material types, and this is the standard number range object which will be used to generate your material number. So just like you see here, when I create a material, okay, so this number is coming up from the this number range object that is there in my ERP or ECC layer, this number range object. Okay, but when I'm creating a material using MDG UI application, MDG UI application, okay, so the thing is that at the type 1, at your SU type 1 level, there is something called a temporary number range object is there. Okay, so you will be assigning something, some temporary number range object. So what happens is when you are trying to create a material using MDG application or MDG options, then initially system will pick up the number from this particular temporary number range object, that is that you assigned at your type 1 entity level. That is whatever the number range object that you are assigning over here, from this one it will take the number and it will show you the number on the UI. Assume that 241 in our case, okay, which is prefixed with dollar symbol. Okay, now that this is the key that gets stored into your staging table. In your staging table, this key will get stored into your staging table, the material number. At the time of activation, at the time of activation, what happens is this record will be moved to here, right? At that particular time, your $241 is a temporary number until your request get activated in MDG. So till then you will be referring using this temporary number. But at the time of activation, what happens is this number will be replaced with the actual number range that is configured in your SPRO, that will starts with 1000. The next number will be, for example, 290 or whatever, 590, whatever the number. And with this number, system will create the material in the system. Not with this number, whatever, once I activate my request, okay, you don't see this number. This is a temporary number. Okay, that's the reason here at the type 1 entity level, you see it's a temporary key. That means until this request is there in my MDG layer, so this is what my temporary key. Once this request get created or activated, basically once this request activated by approver, and then that is the time system will generate the actual number, and that actual number will this actual material will create in your Mara table with this actual number. So okay, after this, next time onwards when you edit the data, so this is the number you will see on this UI 1000590. It will get loaded into your staging table, and on this staging record again you can do some more changes, and again you can activate, that changes will get reflected back. Okay, only at the creation time your system will use this temporary number, because The reason is when I create a request for material creation, right? I don't know whether that material will be approved or rejected. So if I use this particular number range object in my MDG also, what happens? I will someone will create a change request for material creation process. Okay, system will take one the next available number from ECC side, and this number will be shown on this UI. And after that, that means that once it generates the number, you will consume that number, and assume that that request may get rejected. If the request get rejected, this record will be deleted and there is no material creation. So unnecessarily we are consuming the numbers from your actual number range object. Okay, in any organization, these number ranges objects should be utilized very effectively. You cannot just generate and consume that, and you will just simply ignore that number. Okay, because if the limit says that, okay, I can create 1 million of materials using this number range object. So once you consume this all this 1 million, right, then after that you need to look for again some different number range object, or else you need to look for some different numbers. Okay, so that's why we don't wanted to just like create a number, use the number from the actual number range object, and then if the request get rejected, that number will be wasted. So for all these purposes, what MDG is introduced that temporary number range concept, and you can use the temporary number. The temporary number range will be used until the request, especially in create mode. Okay, in change mode, you don't deal with these number range objects, because in the change mode already the number is already created, generated, right? So you will edit the record on that particular with that particular material number. But especially for creation time, any master data, whether it's a material, BP, or any master data. So if there is a if at all you wanted to, for your customer object also, you wanted to assign a temporary number range object, you can make use of that particular setting. Okay, so now what is the significance of dollar? So if I don't show this particular dollar here, then I don't know whether this 241 is generated from my actual number, or people might get confused by looking at this 241. People will think that it might be from your actual number range, or they don't know whether it's a temporary number got generated from temporary or actual number range object, right? So just to tell you that it's a temporary number, so by default SAP that adds this dollar symbol, so that by looking at this dollar symbol, you will understand that it's basically some special character. It can be anything. Okay, but there is a configuration where you can change whether you wanted to use this special character as dollar or hash or something else. That there is a configuration, I will show you that. But by the default configuration says it will be dollar will be used as a prefix to tell you that this is a temporary number. Is this clear to everyone?
For this temporary number also, we need to define number range, or it's standard means
Yes.
automatic comes.
Yeah. So for our custom object, this is our custom object, right? So for our custom object, everything we have to do it. So what you need to do, you need to create a new number range object. How do you create a new number range object? The T code is SNRO. Okay, it's a standard SAP behavior for any modules. Wherever you see a need to create your temporary, you need to create a number range object. Basically, you can actually use this one and create your own temporary number range object. Okay, just let me show you for material master. Material master, because it's a standard data model, data model. So SAP created this number range object for you. You no need to do anything for object. When you are working on or BP, this is already there. So I'll show you this. If I go to edit data model. Okay, so go to entity types. The type 1 entity, parent entity here, material. Okay, so this is my type 1 entity. So here you can see they use the data element, they maintain this language dependence text and also temporary keys. This is the number range object, MDG mat. Okay, so this number range object, you can go to this SNROT code, you can see this, the number range defined for this. Okay, so this is it they created, this is the range and the current number is this one 250. Okay, so when you're creating a new material, it will always pick up from this number range object until that request get activated. Once the request get activated, at the time of activation, I showed you yesterday in the access class that material dark API, that BAPI, right? So inside that particular BAPI, depends on the material type. Anyway, it will take the number range object from your standard ECC number range object for which is great available for material. From there, it will generate the actual material number. But till then, I need some key. So that's the reason SAP use this as a temporary key. For our
What is this
customer,
external checkbox here?
so this is like whether external means when you select this checkbox, what happens is you user also can enter any number within this range. So internal means it will propose. External means you should enter some number within this range. It's a normal behavior. This T code itself is nothing to do with MTG. This
Okay.
SNRO T code is generally available for any number range configurations. Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Any questions? Because this is our custom object, so there is no number range object available. You need to create your Z number range object and use it. Or else if you say here no internal key, see again the important, this has to be in line with your key assignment setting. Here what I'm saying, no internal key assignment, that means I don't wanted to use any internal key. In that case, there is no point in generating the assigning this number key. This will be applicable only when you choose this option or else this option, because in both the cases it says that internal key assignment should be there. So in that case you need to assign this particular key, temporary key, that is nothing but your number range object. Okay,
Okay.
fine. Coming back, any other questions from anyone?
Actually, what happened to the temporary number? Once it is activated, it will replace with the actual number.
Yeah, so temporary number will be anyway, that record will get deleted right from your staging table, so you don't see this temporary number after that anyway.
Oh. So when you are going with the new record creation, it will take the next temporary number, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Coming back to, you have something called here active area. So this active area we discussed yesterday at data model level. Let me show you. Okay. So at the data model level, you have something called active area, which will tell you whether this particular model is designed for reuse or flex. Okay. So this is at the data model level. The same active area setting you also have at entity level as well. So what is the significance of this at entity level? So basically, you can create different reuse areas over here. Okay. For example, I wanted to what is it like? Let's say for example, I created one data model, and that data model is reuse data model. So you have an active area at this data model level. But at so when you having the active area this one, so corresponding to this active area, there is a access class associated here. You can see here, and this access class will be used for all the entities under this data model. Okay, but for example, for a particular entity, I don't wanted to use this access class. I wanted to use a different access class. You can create an access class for entity level as well. Entity level in the sense, in that access class, you will just only handle the CRUD operations for that particular entity. Okay, so for that, in that case, what you need to do is you can create a separate active area over here. okay, reuse area, active area over here, and assign that another class over here, and take this reuse area, and as you can assign it the data entity level as well. So that what happens is, for this particular entity, this will take the precedence. For all other entities, the access class that is available at the data model level, that will take the precedence. It's a flexibility. In most of the cases, we use only one single active area that will be assigned at the data model level. But there are some situations where if there is a need to have a different access class, that's where entity level active area will come into picture. Okay. But we don't use any settings at entity level. We will use mostly at the data model level only this active area thing. But SAP has provided this flexibility and
For,
deletion.
for
Yeah.
standard, we have this active area for standard data entity types.
For standard entity types, so it will be it always at the data model level. You see here for it is always available at the data model level material. And even if I go to reuse active area, so there is no other ignore these the other ones. I'll take this separately. So we don't use these ones, but this is the one active area used across your entire data model material data model level. There is no other active area which will be used at a particular assigned data entity level, not only for for BP as well. So, but SAP, they see that, okay, maybe in someone wants to have a separate access, active area at a entity level for particular couple of entities. So they have provided that flexibility. But in the standard objects, there is no, for any entity, the access reuse active area is always available at the data model level itself. There is no entity which actually has a different active area for the standard objects.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Okay, coming back to deletion. So this says that whether you should be able to delete this entity or not. Okay, so whether you should provide that flexibility to delete this entity data or not. Allowed means this entity data you can delete. Not allowed means you cannot actually delete this entity data. Okay, so we'll just leave the default settings only, and this is a description of your entity. And after that, here you have uh, structure, table, field, X fields. Okay, so these technically doesn't have any significance, these fields. Okay, but why what is the purpose of these fields over here? Let's say, for example, now you have this material entity, right? Or else there are many entities are there. Now the thing is that you wanted to know corresponding to this particular entity, what could be my standard ECC side, the table or field name. Okay, so just to give you a mapping between your ECC side table and or the table field, so they have provided this field. So you can say here, let's say this is corresponding to my Mara table. Okay, and this field, this entity field is corresponding to my material or Matner thing. So this, whoever actually opens this data model entity, they'll, by looking at this one, they might see, okay, this is for the Mara table, and this field is for material field. Okay, so just to give you that is significant. So SAP has provided this useful help kind of text fields over here, so that by looking at this entity and these fields, one can understand, okay, this entity is corresponding to this so and so table. So in material also, you are creating, maybe you might create some new entities, Z entities, and those Z entities might be corresponding to some custom tables. Okay, so now for any new person whoever opens that data model, by looking at that entity, he don't know where this data will go and save. But if I provide the table name over here, so it will be easy for me to look at, and okay, this entity is for this Z table, and all the data gets stored into this particular Z table. So just you, for as a kind of information thing, so SAP provided this fields where you can map your corresponding ECC side of the table and field. Okay, and X fields are Just like if you work on any BAPI, right? When you're creating any objects using BAPI, you will have the structures and X structures. Does anyone aware of what is the purpose of that X structures?
To
When we
identify
pass
what fields
X,
we are passing.
Sorry.
To identify what are the fields we are passing while creating
Exactly.
our.
Exactly. So the same thing here. So for this particular field, what is the corresponding X field? Okay. So just to update on the BAPI side, okay, this structure field will tell you that these changes, this field got updated, all right. So for that reason, they provided this X field as well. So it's an optional, it's not mandatory. So this was not maintained for any of the standard of things as well, but they just provided a flexibility that you can, if at all, you can make use of these fields as well. Okay, and there is something called checkbox generated. So you don't select or set anything. What happens is the way how we created this particular data model, there is a different, let me show you here. If you, to create all the data models or entities or anything, right? So we use this particular transaction, this particular node. The same way, there is something create and edit mappings extend. Define. There should be. Hmm. So this is a GU based one. So whatever we use. Similarly, there should be here one more link. This is for the mapping side. Somehow it is not showing over here. Edit data model. Okay, I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe they removed it or not. Maybe they removed because no one use that one. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is similar to this is a GUI based screens here. Okay, so you can see this data model edit, everything is a GUI based. The same kind of thing here, there should be one link over here where you can do the same mapping, create data model, everything via web-based application, like your NWBC web-based application. So there will be web-based application. So there also you can actually make use of there you can create data models, you can create entities, you can create the relationships and everything. So the difference is that is a web-based and this is a GUI-based. So I never saw that people will be using that one. So we most of the time we will use edit data model transaction only, this particular node only to create or modify any data models. Okay, so when you do something from that particular transaction or from that particular web-based one, so what happens is this particular setting will be that generated will be ticked just to indicate that this entity and data model modified using the other GUI, other web-based application, not from this one. So this tick box will be ticked, but you can just ignore it. Is there's no significance at all. And in the latest version, they removed that node itself. So there is no point in discussing this particular point. Okay, so that is about your type 1 entity. And at an attribute level, yeah, please go ahead.
here in field and X field, do we send multiple or only key field name only?
No, no, no. For every that is at entity level, and at attribute level also you will have that particular. So this is my entity, and these are the attributes under that entity, right? So if you scroll right here as well, you have that one. So for a particular attribute, right, you can maintain one structure. This is, let's say, Mara table and field is TKL. Mara table field is MBRSH. Mara table field is MTRT. Okay.
Okay. But at entity types level, right? Which
No,
field
at
should?
entity type, yeah, at entity type SAP provided because that is also this entity also one of the key attribute, right? So that is the reason. Considering that point, they provided that setting over there at the entity type level.
Okay, means like Matner we can provide there if we need
Yeah,
to.
yeah, Matner. Or else what you can do is instead of maintaining the field names, there here in the entity type itself, you just say it's a Mara and leave it. That means
Hmm.
that entire entity is for Mara table and all the attributes also for Mara table. Once I open Mara table, I can map these attributes versus the Mara table attributes. But maybe because mostly we'll use the same data element, right? So here the recommended approach is you use whatever the data elements that you already have on the ECC side. Don't create any new data elements. Technically, it will take, but to maintain a consistency, right? Whether it is a MDG model or my ECC table, you will always refer one single data element in both the places. Field name might be different, but by looking at the data model, you can sorry, data element, you can recognize, okay, this field is corresponding to this field.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, see, if you look at this, like more related to your how you created table or with the attributes in SC11, right? Which is a pure technical stuff. So that's the reason I say always the data model part is comes under the technical MDG technical person, because for the functional they don't know what is the data element. Even if they know, I mean, how if at all you have to create a new data element, that is again comes under a technical scope, the search helps and everything. So it's always this data model extensions, data model design, everything will be comes under a technical thing. Okay. So now along with this at attribute level, you have something called key field. For type 1, we don't use this. For type 1, always this is a key field. But for your type 4s, right? For example, you wanted to say any of the key attribute as a key attribute, additional key attribute, you can make use of this one. But always for type 1, you will use that the data element. This itself will become a key field. And you have something called required field. So when you say this as a required field entry to create this data at the runtime, this field will become a mandatory field, just like you see in material type, industry sector. These are the mandatory fields, right? So if at all some attributes you wanted to say is a mandatory, then you can actually make use of this particular setting. You can say when you tick this one, on the UI side, this field will become mandatory, because this basic data is also one entity. On in the backend, this basic data is one entity, which is your material entity, type 1 entity. So all these attributes that you see, these attributes are coming from your type 1 entity. So there at that attribute level, if you say one field as a mandatory, automatically on the UI, it will show this asterisk symbol and indicates that it's a mandatory field. So this is what, okay. And you unit of measure, you when you are creating the table also, you know that we have this unit of measure thing. If at all you have any quantity or any currency field, you need to say, you need to mention that one of that particular, what is the unit of measure for that one. So this is the same thing we use. If you say some field which is let me open Mara table, or so when you are saying it's a 100, right? And it's a quantity. 100 quantity is what? It's a dollar, or it's a INR, or it's a euro. So that's what we need to mention. Wherever you use a quantity field, then automatically it makes mandatory to maintain the corresponding field. See here, here you are saying it is a unit of measure, like maybe base, whatever the unit of measure, right? Corresponding to that one, what is the unit of measure field that you need to mention over here? The reference field and reference table and reference field. The same information, when system generates a staging table, you it will take this currency field, okay, and then it will actually, when it generates the staging table, it will make entry like this. Okay, so for that particular purpose, you need to mention the unit of measure field from the same entity. So you have a requirement, you need to have an attribute like a currency attribute. Okay, then you cannot have only the currency. You need to have two fields over here. One is the currency and the currency unit of measure. Both you should have those both the fields. Okay, and for the currency, you need to mention that the currency unit of measure as a in this field, you need to mention what is the corresponding unit of measure field. Clear?
It's for this. Can we have multiple key fields for the type 1 entity also, if
For type 1
required?
entity, you can have multiple key fields, but not this option. There is another option. We will discuss that today.
Okay.
So your type 3, we haven't discussed about SU type 3. We discussed only type 1 and type 4, right? So type 3 will give you another additional key fields. So that we will discuss once we create type 4 as well. Okay, fine. Now coming back to the next search help, just like you have at entity level search help, at attribute level also search help is there. So by default, search help will be taken from this data element. But something you wanted to override, you don't wanted to use the search help from this data element. I wanted to have my own search help for this particular thing. You can make use of this particular field to assign a search help over here. Okay. So the next you have something called non-existence. Okay, so this non-existence basically, let me show you on the UI here. Okay, so now this is one field. For this particular field, if at all, system will accept the values from this list only. We call this F4 values or your F4 values, right? It will take allow any of these values. Okay, but if I try to enter here something, let's say XYZ, which is not there, and hit enter. Okay, so it won't take, basically when you click on a check button, you get a message here saying that XYZ is not available. Somewhere you get that. See here, XYZ is not available, this material type. Okay, so basically it looks at whether this value exists in the domain data or not, the value table or not. That is a default behavior which comes from your data element. From the data element, you will be in the domain level, you will be associating your value table, and from the value table it shows this all the list of values, and whatever you enter over here, it will go and validate in the whether this entry is there in the value table or not. If it is not there, it will give you a message over here, right? This is the standard behavior even in your MM01 as well. Let me show you in MM01. Okay, I'll go to basic data. Let's say I enter some material group, something random material group. Enter, you are getting this error message. Okay, now in ECC side, I cannot save this record until I correct this. Okay, but in MDG, what happens is, in MDG, what happens basically, I wanted to temporarily bypass this check. Okay, I wanted to temporarily bypass this check because this material group does not exist currently. I know this one, but at a requester level, I don't wanted to stop my process, my activity. I wanted to go with this value which does not exist, but I know that this value is being maintained by functional in 1 or 2 days. So let at approver level stop the process, but at the requester level, I wanted to continue with this. So then in that case, you can actually make use of this particular checkbox, no existence check. That means when you select this field, no existence check, system will take whatever value, though in the F4 that values are not there, it will take whatever the value that you enter. Okay, and you submit the request. Let assume that you have a workflow in the at the approver level. At the approver level, you wanted to system will actually check that whether this value is exist or not. If that does not exist, then maybe you will throw some error message and you will correct that one. So ultimately what happens is this no existence checks give you flexibility just to temporarily bypass some checks, but this doesn't mean that if you don't maintain that value at all until the final activation and the you initiated activation process, right? So on when it is this object is getting created in the backend, that times your activation process will get failed because you entered a wrong value, so your activation process will get failed. So you need to design your workflow in such a way that, okay, so you have something like a requester, approver 1, approver 2, and then you have something called activation process. Okay, so you can configure in such a way that this check maybe you can bypass at this level, okay, but you will ensure that this data will be maintained at this level, or else you bypass at this level also, but ensure that it maintains at this level. So at any of this particular stage, right, you need to ensure that this data is maintained. But if you still continue without maintaining or without correcting or without creating that material group, your activation process will get failed. Okay, so in MDG, it provides a flexibility where you can temporarily bypass the check. We actually, no one uses this setting. We used in one of the product development side for the EAM objects. We have a requirement there. So for one of the product, so that's where actually we use this one. Otherwise, no one even most of the people not aware of what is the significance of this one as well. Okay, so this is just for your knowledge purpose, and I strongly recommend try to avoid this setting, because what happens is when you select the setting, at the entire process it never makes mandatory. You have to add a separate check at somewhere in the validation or rule you need to configure before activation whether this is maintained or not. Okay, that is about no existence check. Any questions till now? So we just completed only our type 1. Now we need to create from type 1 point of view, everything is done. Now we need to create a type 4 for plant entity. Okay, so just click on new entry here again. So here we wanted to create a plant entity. So just name it Z. Let's say, for example, I'll say instead of plant, let's put plant only or site. Let me use site. Okay, Z site. Site is nothing but plant only. So some places, some projects we call it as a site, some client side we call it as a plant. Anything is fine. I just created one Z site. Now I wanted to define it as a type 4. As I said, for type 4s, you cannot use this setting. This is only for your type 1s only. For example, if you try to use this setting also and try to save, you get an error message. Forget about this relationship second and third, we will discuss now. But what it says is that look at the first error message, entry of a data element is invalid. And you can always see one important point in MDG, this long text, this help text is very, very clearly they maintained. Okay, you find a very good documentation here. So always if you get some message, if you're not clear, try to make use of this long text. It will clearly say that what is the why this error got popped up. Okay, the data elements cannot be specified for storage use type you selected. What we selected type 4. For type 4 you cannot use the data element setting. Okay, so that is what. So now, okay, so now here at the plant level, right, so let me, ZT is our data model, and here we have Z product. Okay, here this itself is a key field, and on top of that one we have material type, material group, let's say industry sector or something. Now what we are doing, we are creating another Z site. Okay, now what are the fields that we are looking, the key fields at the site level?
Material plant.
Yeah, so material, because this we know it's corresponding to your Marcy table. In Marcy table, material and the plant are the two key fields. So that's the reason. Material, I need here material, plant, and these are the, so these should be my key fields. And this will be like let's say for example status, there is a X plant status. I will just add some other fields over here, ABC indicator, something like this. These are the non-key fields, these are the key fields. So now The staging table that we are actually expecting, that staging table should have these two are the key fields and rest are the non-key fields. This is what we wanted to create, right? Now, for type 4s, always you cannot, type 4 cannot have its own key field. That means, what does that mean is basically, one thing is you cannot maintain here, you cannot maintain a data element, because this cannot be a field in the generated staging table. It's a type 4. Everything should be there under the attributes only. It's a chain. Okay. So type 4 cannot have a key field directly. That means at the attribute level also you cannot select this as a key field. Attribute level, I showed you that there is an option where you can say keys, right? So that is also, so basically the point is type 4 cannot have its own keys. So the keys has to come from some place. It has to derive from some place. Okay, so that is with a we will generate the keys for your type 4 using relationships. Okay, so that's why when I try to save here, as and when you introduce a type 4, okay, so what it says is leading inconsistent, qualifying inconsistent, qualifying relation is not there, description is missing, we will maintain the description. But when you create a type 4, it is expecting a relationship basically. When you have only under a data model, when you have only type 1, there is relationship is not mandatory. But when you introduce a type 4, because this is a child, right? Now I need to define a relation between this type 1 and type 4. So type 4 cannot exist directly under a data model. It has to have a relationship with any of the parent node. Here in our case, the parent is product. Okay, so you need to create, let's say there is something called leading relationship. Leading relationship. So between your type 1 and type 4, you need to maintain a leading relation. When you maintain this leading relation, what happens is the key field in your type 1 will automatically get added as a key field in your generated staging table. Okay, so that's how via relationship you can generate a key, not by selecting any attribute as a key field for type 4s. Why? Because type 4 is a child which is having a dependency. So this you need to define the dependency. This is my child, and for this child, this is the parent. So you need to create such kind of relationship. So that's the reason leading relation is mandatory when you introduce a type 4 in your data model. Whether it is in data model or BP or any data model, you need to define when you add a custom entity in your data model, you will get the same error. Leading is not there. Okay, whether in BP also, if you create a custom entity or finance or in your custom data model, wherever you create a type 4 entity, then it expects a leading mandatorily. Okay, now I'll show you that how to create that leading relationship. So you know this data element you are not supposed to maintain. Key behavior is also not you are not supposed to maintain. So this is valid for your data element and key assignment, language dependent text. All these are valid for your type 1s. So they are using the same GUI. This UI is same UI for all your different type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. So actually, SAP should have, when you select type 4, they should have made these attributes as a read only. But they didn't do anything. They just simply left it like that. But for type 4s, this is not relevant. Key assignment is not relevant. Language dependent texts are not relevant. Okay. Search LP is also not relevant. All these are not relevant. Temporary key also not relevant. Active area is relevant because you can have a separate active area for your child. Okay, if you don't maintain this, whatever the active area that you maintain at the data model level, that will be that will take the precedence. Only here, when you're creating a type 4, only the relevant attributes are, one is either active area, which is optional, but the mandatory is description. Okay, I just maintained this. I just created entity. That's it. You still have this because it is expecting these relationships for your type 4. Okay, now I'll go to attributes. Okay, let me add the attributes. Let's take Mara table, sorry, Marcy table, and add some from Marcy table. Key fields, so these two, right, material, these key fields will come via relationship only, so you cannot directly add that fields over there. Okay, so what you can do is, we can, let's take, I can take this ABC indicator non-key field. I'll maintain the non-key field ABC indicator. Then the description, ABC indicator. And what else we can take? Just one more field. There is a explant status LVOEM deletion indicator. Okay, let's take this one. LVOEM. Here I'm just adding a non-key field attributes only. So I just added non-key fields. Now we will handle the key fields. How to create, how to bring the key fields for your type 4? Just look at this. I'll save key here. Okay. Now copy this. Go to relationships here, left side. Okay. For this particular data model, click on new entry. From entity will be always your parent, the big one, Z. Okay, Z product. To entity is your plant, type 4. Okay, so product is leading site. This is what I'm trying to say here. Okay, so Z product entity, Z, or else I'll just say simply in a generic manner. We can say something like this here. SU type 1 leading, SU type 4. Always on the left hand side you should have the bigger one. So because many times you get confused where I should keep my type 1 or type 4, right? So left hand side it should be bigger one, and the right hand side it should be that particular entity. Okay, so that's what I'm saying here. From entity will be your type 1, and this is your child entity. Child entity in the sense your type 4. You can name this relation anything. Let's say prod site, any free text, you can just name it. Okay, now what is the relationship type? I wanted to create a leading relationship. Okay, and cardinality in the sense, in this example one material can extend to multiple plants, right? So that's what in Marcy table, for one material you can extend it to multiple plants. So that's a 1:n relationship. So that's why we will always use 1:n relationship. Enter. Okay, now save. See, one error gone, that leading relationship error gone. Okay, so now save your changes. So now so with this one what happens is, if once the table data model activated in the generated staging table for your site master, so material will become one of the key field, that automatically in the staging table at the time of activation system will look at the relationships. For this one, what is the leading relation entity? Okay, this is a leading relation entity. From this one it will take that field name, may take the key field, and it will add in the generated staging table as a key field. So we got one key. Now the second key I need to get, that is nothing but the plant. Okay, so for that one it expects, when you say here it is expecting that qualifying relationship. So in general, there are totally three relationships we are discussing now. One is leading relationship. The second one is qualifying relationship, and the third one is reference relationship. These are the three. Out of this, we discuss this one. Okay. Now let's discuss what is this qualifying relationship. So look at this. I'll try to write in a picture so that you can easily visualize the purpose of the qualifying this one. Okay, so this is your ECC and this is your MDG layer. Okay, now I'll show you on the UI. Let me maintain some material. FERT. I'll select some industry sector. Description also there. Now in the standard object, I wanted to extend this material to plants. So for that one, you go to the DOM, this is a plant section. So you wanted to extend to a plant. So do F4. Can you tell me from where these values are coming up? Now I'm in MDG UI, but still I'm getting all these plants, list of plants. Any idea?
Are they from flex tables? Not
These
sure.
plants. It's very, I mean, from your ABAP with your ABAP knowledge, you can just simply guess it. Fine, no issues. Let me show you here. So in Marcy table, you have this plant data element. In the data element, go to your domain. This is a master table T001W. So how you create this? You go to SPRO configuration and create a new plant. This will be functional activity. So once functional creates a new plant in SPRO, okay, so that plant will get stored into this T001W table. And this table added as a value table for this my data element. So whenever I do an F4 here, this data is coming. So what I'm trying to say here is the plant data. Okay, so you have your SPRO configuration. Via SPRO configuration, you maintain the plant, and this data gets stored into T001W table. Okay, now on MDG UI, when I'm extending my material to a particular plant, then what happens in the F4, I get to see all the list of plants from this particular table. Right now, the thing is that here, if I try to enter some plant which doesn't exist, it will, whatever the value I entered over here, it has to qualify in the sense it has to go and verify whether this value is available in the T001W or not. So you are in MDG system, but still it is referring your backend SPRO configuration, whether this is a valid plant or not. How this is referring? Using your value table from the data element, right? So that means what happens is here your material is there, and you are extending it to a plant. So when you enter some 1,000 plant, let's say, it has to qualify whether this value is the right value or not. So this is what happening in the standard UI. I just showed you in the material UI, right? So for this purpose, what happens is this we call it as a qualification process. It's your foreign key check or whatever the qualification we call, right? So this particular table we will represent with SU type 3. Okay, so and I make a relation with this qualify relation. With this one, what happens is, and this is SU type 3, corresponding to this SU type 3, I will link this particular table. Okay, so whatever I'm extending my material to a plant via this particular SU type 3, it will go and validate. That means it has to qualify whether this is a valid value or not. And then if that is a valid value, then it will accept this particular plant. Okay, so you now SU type 3 is always we use it for a qualification purpose. Okay, so ideally, technically, it ultimately go and check your corresponding domain data table. But for that purpose, SAP brought this SU type 3 concept, and wherever you here, we have your SU type 1, and you have your SU type 4 here. Okay, so your material data is always either in SU type 1 or SU type 4. We are creating a material data. The attributes spread across in your SU type 1s and SU type 4s. That is the master data you are creating. SU type 3 doesn't hold your material master data. You will use this as a qualification purpose, plant qualification or sales or qualification or as country qualification. So wherever you see a need that, okay, it has to qualify, then you create that, you represent that via SU type 3. And if you make a qualify relationship, what happens is the key field in your SU type 3, that is a plant, will come and add as a key field in the generated staging table. So your type 4 always get another key using a qualification relationship from another type 3. So for that one, first I need to create a type 3 entity. Type 3 entity represents my plant master, the complete plant master. Now, whatever I extend this material to multiple plants, everything has to qualify with this SU type 3. Clear? So for SU type 3, there is no
Everything
staging.
means every fields or only key fields?
Okay, I'll come back to that one. For now, assume that it's a key field. So key field, for now you can assume it as a key field, but non-key fields also we can add. That is the purpose of significance of your reference relationship that we will discuss. Okay, but now SU type 3, there won't be any staging table that will get created for SU type 3. Staging table will be created only for SU type 1 and type 4. Why staging tables are creating for SU type 1 and 4? That holds my material master data. SU type 3 doesn't hold my material master data. It's a plant master data, which I'm using for qualification purpose when I'm creating my material. Just like you are creating a customer, right? You will country should be there. So you create those countries separately in SPRO configuration or somewhere, but you use that country in your master data. So it acts as a reference master data. Okay. So that will give you the additional key. So that's the reason here when I try to save, it is throwing me an error message that qualification is not there relationship. For that one, to maintain that qualification relationship, first you need to create a type 3. Okay, so we created type 1 and type 4, but now we need to create a type 3. Okay, so click on new entry. The type 3, I'll just name it Z site I'm saying site master, which contains all the complete list of sites or plants. Now categorize this as a type 3. So you can see not changeable via MDG, no generated tables. No generated tables means because it always refers your underlying ECC, the value tables. So that's why there is no need of generating any staging tables. And not changeable via MDG means basically we are not actually changing the plant data. We are creating the material data and we are using the plant. To change the plant data, you will go to SPRO configuration and do the changes. So that is the reason type 3 data you cannot change it. That's what it says. Type 3 data is what? Your plant data, your plant master. You cannot change that plant master using this one. You can only use or refer your plant master in your while you are creating a material master. So that's the idea. So I just selected it as a type 3. And for type 3s, type 3 don't have its attributes at all. It will be always only entity. And this itself will become the kind of key attribute in the generator in the type 4 staging table. For that one, you need to mention the data element. So that's where you need to input the data element. So the data element you will be maintaining only for type 1s, where the type 1 will become a key field. And for type 3, because type 3 won't hold any other attributes. It just represents one single plant, or it can be country, or it can be unit of measure, anything. But this itself is one attribute, single attribute, and you are assigning a data element. With this one, what I'm saying is this data element in turn associated with a value table, right? So at type 3 level, I'm providing one data element over here. Okay, data element, and this data element linked to your value table. So that's how you are actually bringing the corresponding backend value table into this MDG scope. Okay, and other keys, all these things are not applicable for your type 3s. Only data element and description. Let's say site master. Save it. No other fields applicable. Still, it is giving me this error. This is not there. Okay, and you are not supposed to maintain any attributes. These attributes you will maintain for your type 1s and type 4s, not for type 3s, because type 1 and type 4 holds your actual master data, and type 3 holds your reference master data. Even if you try to add some attributes, there is no generated staging tables, first of all, and it will give you an error message. You cannot add attributes for this selected storage use type. Okay, so just take your type 3, go to relationships, same, maintain your type 3 on the left hand side, which is a bigger one, and here your type 4, maintain some relation here, site. Okay, and then relationship type will be qualifying, and always the cardinality will be 1:n. Okay, now save. See that error, both errors message gone. So when you create a type 4, when you introduce a type 4, it is mandatory to maintain these relationships. Whether it is in data model or BP data model or custom data model, the concept remains same. Under material master data model, you wanted to add a custom entity. So when you add a custom entity, usually we will add only type 4 entities, because type 1 is already there for your BP and all these data models. The type 1 entities, which is a parent entity, is already there. At max, what you can do is you can add some custom attributes in the existing entity, or else you can add a new entity under the data model. So when you add a new entity under a data model, it will be a type 4 only. Whether that comes under material as a child or under a plant as a child, that depends on your business requirements. But when you introduce a type 4 in your data model, it will always expect two relationships. One is leading and qualifying. So that's where you need to identify what is the leading entity, what is the qualifying entity. If qualifying entity, you have to create it if that does not exist. Okay, so just create the relationships like this and save your data model. Now go back and activate your data model. Okay, it also the transport, everything is transportable. Okay, it got activated. Now look at the staging tables. It is your data model, execute. So now there is a new entry here where this is for the your type 4. Included entity is your type 4 and the main entity is your type 1. This is a child under this type 1. Okay. So if you double click this staging table for your type 4, see this is a key field material. This added because of the leading relation. This got added because of the qualifying relationship. And active anyway, it is always key for any generated staging table. And after that, we added two direct attributes. These are the two direct attributes we added under your type 4, ABC indicator and deletion flag. So if you look at this, we haven't selected any key attribute at type 4 level. Both keys got derived in your generated staging table for type 4 using relationships. So likewise, if at all you want one more key field for your plant, create one more type 3 and make a qualifying relationship. So you can keep on adding multiple key fields using a qualification relationship. So someone asked, can I have for type 1 multiple keys? Okay, by default, your entity itself is one of the main key field. Additionally, if at all you want one more key field, always you can go with a type 3. Create one type 3 and make a qualifying relationship with your type 1. So it's not necessarily always type 3 will have a qualification with type 4s. You can have it, okay, so like this. So let me show you here some examples. This is your SU type 1. You created one SU type 4. You make a leading relation here, okay, and you can also create one SU type 3 and make a qualification relationship. Okay, so here example material. So here plant. So at this level, material is key field. This is what we just noticed, and plant is also key field. Now I'll create one more SU type 4, which is a child to my another type 4. This is a site master, assume that. Okay. So here also you need to maintain a leading relation. Because of the leading relation, there will be two keys. Always from the parent to child, all the keys will flow because of the leading. Here, what are the two keys? One is material and one is plant. But now I need one more additional key, right? So you can create, let's say, SU type 3, that is nothing but your storage location, and make a qualify relationship. Because of this qualify relationship, you will get a storage location as a third key. Here also you can have one more SU type 3 and make a qualify relation to get additional keys. This can be done here as well. Qualification relationship. So to get any additional keys, always use SU type 3 and make a qualify relationship to get an additional key. Is this clear to everyone?
For qualifying, it's always 1:n cardinality or
Yeah. For qualification, it's always 1:n cardinality. Why? Because what n means, n indicates that you are qualifying a one plant with a complete list of plants. SAP says it's a mandatory 1:n. You cannot use 1:1. Okay, that's how you can extend it to multiple plants, right? So you have 100 plants in your value table. You might be extending this material to 10 plants, right? So that should be always for one material, multiple plants, in the sense that qualification also should be 1:n.
and for leading relationship, it will be between entity type 1 always should be there, or it can be between entity type 4 also.
Yes. Leading, that's what here, right? You see here, this is my SU type 4 and this is another SU type 4. Between these two things, I maintained a leading relation. And this is SU type 1. And between SU type 1 and SU type 4 also, I maintained a leading. That means leading relationship always from parent to child. The parent can be a type 1 or another type 4.
But not with type 3, we can have leading relationship.
No. With the type 3, the only possible relationships are qualifying or referencing, which we will discuss after this. So qualifying we already discussed. Reference also will be there. So type 3 can have only qualify or reference relationship with type 1s or type 4s.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So any questions from anyone? So whenever you are designing a data model, custom data model, or when you are extending a standard data model, so this is a design that you need to first think through that. Okay, how my data model should look like, or when you are extending, where should I extend? What is the parent? Do I need a qualification? Or all those things you need to discuss. Okay. Now, one another tip I will just tell you. I don't want you to get confused, but let me tell you one more thing. You see here, you have your SU type 1 and you have your SU type 4, and we maintained a leading relationship. Okay. Now, if you say the cardinality 1 is to n, 1 is to n cardinality, then only your SU type 3 become mandatory and qualify relationship is mandatory. Why? Because in this case, okay, in this example, you need two keys at your plant level. Plant level in the sense of you have your Marcy table. At the Marcy table level, you need two keys. One is material and one is a plant. Okay, so here you say 1 is to n and make this as a mandatory qualification relationship. This is one use case. So in this example, you have two tables. One is Mara table, one is Marcy table, and this is for your SU type 1 is for your Mara, and SU type 4 is your Marcy. So to get this kind of key, you have to follow this approach, qualify, and it should be 1 is to n. Okay, but now there is one more option. Sometimes what happens is in the standard data models, if you look at material and all those things, let's say for example, Mara table is there. In Mara table, you have 100 attributes. Out of 100 attributes, 30 attributes are generic. Remaining, let's say 40 attributes are related to, it's a generic only, but these are more relevant for sales. And there are some 30 attributes which are relevant for maybe some purchase. Though these are all under Mara table only, but for sales these are relevant, and for these 30 attributes are relevant for purchasing related attributes. But if you open Mara table, you will see all these under one single table. In MDG, how SAP designed your data model is they took material as a type 1 entity, material as a your type 1 entity. Okay, under this one they just only added this generic 30. Okay, the remaining 40, what they have done is they created another entity called Mara sales. It is a type 4. They created it as a type 4. Okay, and here they maintain the leading relationship. But technically, though you have two entities, both these entity data ultimately at the time of activation should get stored into one single Mara table only. Here, logically, you are dividing into two separate entities in MDG and with two separate staging tables. But at the runtime, at the activation time, both all these 30, these 40, let's say 40 attributes, these 30 plus 40 attributes will get stored into one single. So here you have two staging tables. At the activation time, the data gets stored into one single Mara table. Okay. Now in this case, There is no change in the key. For Mara sales, the key is same material only. So how I can get here, when you say here, you need to say 1:1 relationship. You need to create a leading relation with 1:1, not 1:n. When you say 1:1, that means here itself, here in the stage, here anyway material is a key. Here also the generated staging table material is a key. So then there is no need of additional key. SU type 3. SU type 3 will come into picture only if you need at your type 4 level one additional key. But if I don't need a key, whatever with the leading relation, whatever the key that you are getting, that is sufficient for you, then you know you can that how you can represent by saying 1:1, because these 30 attributes and these 40 attributes are for one single material. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, so by default, if you create a type 4, system will give you an error message saying that qualification is mandatory. That is because it is assuming that when you are creating a type 4, it is by default, it is assuming that there are two keys are required. But when you make that at the leading relationship level, let's say, for example, here, if you go to the relationships, at the leading relationship level for the type 1, if I say it's S means it's 1:1. When I say S 1:1, then this is not required. Why? Because 1:1 means it's a one key only. In your type 4 also will have one key, not two keys. To get to have, when you need two keys to bring 1:n relationship, one material, multiple plants, then you need a plant as a key. One material on both the sides, then you don't need an additional key. Okay, so I mean, if that is how you can also avoid a qualification relationship. But in general, right, this is a standard product, and when SAP designs this MDG data model, they have done that logically. They divided like this. Ideally, these sales SU type 4 I can avoid. I can add a 30 plus 40 everything 100 attributes under SU type 1 itself, so that I no need to create this sales entity. The reason SAP created it, they wanted to logically group the attributes, so that on the UI also, if someone is not using this system for sales process, they're using it only for purchase, then I can completely take this sales out of governance scope. So just to give you such kind of flexibility, they did that. But when we are creating our custom data models, always we will keep all the common attributes are where you have 1:1 relation, right? Under one entity only. We don't split into multiple entities. We don't make it more complicated. Since it's a product, MM and BP, these are the out of box data models. So they properly designed that one. That's the only point. So one is to qualifying for always for your type 4. Is it mandatory? No. Only when you have a 1:to leading relation with 1:n relation, then only qualifying relation is mandatory. If you make leading relation 1:1, qualification relationship is not mandatory. Okay, so that's all about type 1, type 3, and type 4 leading and qualification relationships. Now let's discuss about reference relation. Reference relationship also you will always do with type 3 only. Okay, what is the difference? I'll show you here. You have your SU type 1, which is okay. Under this, let's say for example, you have your SU type 4. This is a leading relation 1:n. You created one SU type 3 and made a qualified relationship. So here in our example, material added as a key because of leading, plant added as a key because of the qualification relationship. Now I wanted to add country, a non-key attribute. It should be a non-key attribute. How should I do? Directly you can open this SU type 4 entity and add this as a normal attribute. just like here. Go to entity types. Select your type for attributes. Just like how we added this, you can add your country attribute also directly here. That is one way. And most of the people will follow this approach, 99%. But what I can do is, I can create another SU type 3, which is my country master land one table. That is, the table is T1 something. We'll see that. Okay. So country master, country, okay, country. Just like how you created this plant, you create another SU type 3 for country. Now you make a reference relationship with your type 4. When you make a reference relationship, just like your type 3, how this attribute got added, this country also will get added. The only difference is it will become a non-key. If you make a qualify with a type 3, it will become a key. If you make a reference relation with the type 3, then that attribute, this entity will add as a non-key field. That's the only difference. Okay, so by looking at this example, see, both are two options. One, directly you can add under that entity. Other option is via SU type 3 and reference relation also. In the generated staging table, you can add this one. Now, what is the advantage I will get with this creating a separate entity altogether and making a reference relationship? What is the advantage I will get it? Can anyone guess?
Reference data we can use.
Reference data you can use here as well, because directly if you add a country, right, and you mention the data element land one is a data element. So when you use this data element, automatically F4 values also will come over here as well. Okay, no issues. So the thing is that reusability. When I say reusability, let's say for example, I also created one more SU type 4, and I need the country field here as well. So instead of creating this country in all the fields wherever I need, this SU type 3 is already there. So I'll just simply make a reference relationship over here. So same SU type 3, you can make reference relationship with multiple entities. Okay, so automatically this attribute will get added here as well as a non-key. What is the advantage with this one? If at all search help you wanted to do some change or some description with respect to country or anything, right? So if you add as an individual attributes in your respective entities, then you need to, if at all I wanted to assign a new search shell, then you need to open each and every entity and there locate that attribute and change assign the search shell. Instead of that one, if I at a SU type 3 level also, you can assign a search shell. At the entity type level, I showed you that search shell, right? If you assign this one, the same search shell will be applied for all the fields wherever it is referring. So your maintenance will become easy. And we are creating one entity and reusing everywhere, so you will follow a consistent approach. One of the examples like unit of measures. Unit of measure we will be using in multiple entities. In sales also you need sales unit of measure. Purchase entities also you need purchase unit of measure. So SAP standard SAP, what it will do is they will create a type 3 and they will use make a reference relationship in all the entities. So there is no harm in directly adding that attribute at each and every entity as well. There is no, absolutely there is no harm. But SAP recommends that you just follow this approach. That's it. But it's not a hard thing. You can create separate direct attributes under every entity as well. But that is the significance of reference relationship. So reference relationship also always you will make with your SU type 3s only. But the difference between qualify and difference is, if in case of reference relationship, it will added the attribute added will get added as a non-key. If it is a qualification relation, it will add as a key field. You can make a reference relation with the type 1s as well again. So you can make a reference relation with type 1 as well. So this country will get added in your type 1 as a non-key field.
We can add qualifying also for type 1, right?
Yeah, qualify also you can add. So that is about what we discussed today. We discussed SU type 1, SU type 4, SU type 3, leading relation, qualify relation, reference relation. So we discussed all this. There is one more relationship here, foreign key relationship. I'm not sure if it is still, but we don't use at all. It is just like your qualify relation only. Foreign relationship, we don't use at all this one. SAP itself says that this can be handled by qualification relationship. I don't know why SAP created this separately just to confuse, but 200% in all the MDG data model changes or creations, you will make use of only these three. Even in the standard data model also, this is never used. They added this, they might be thinking that it might useful or they can enhance it later, but this is not useful. Okay, so it is just like your qualifier relation only. Okay, so you always just remember only these three relationships, that's it. We still have to discuss type 2. Okay, type 2 also, again, no, you don't see anywhere that type 2 is used, but I'll explain conceptually what is this type 2 and everything. What we will do is quickly I will show you that reference relationship. Okay, so that we can close that point as well here. Let me go to entity types. I'll create one new entity type 3 first. Z country. Set type 3. For type 3, always you need to mention the data element. I'm just saying here land 1. Land 1 is a data element that we use for country. This is associated with your T001, I think, the value table. Okay, and just maintain the description. Save. Now go to relationships. New relationship. Left side Z country. Let's say country name. Here it's a Z site type 4 and make it as a reference relationship. Okay, this is a 1:n. Save. Activate your data model again. Okay, data model got activated. Now look at the staging table. I'll run this report again with the ZT data model. So go to site staging table. There is a country field, see here, added as a non-key field. One way is I can directly add it under that entity, or else via reference relation with a type 3 also, we'll add this attribute as a non-key field. That's it. If you know all these, whatever we discussed, these three entity types and three relationships, you are done. Your data model. Of course, type 4, type 2, I will explain, but type 2 we don't use at all. But I'll explain the type 2 as well. Okay, so this if you are clear, just a minute. So if you are clear with these concepts, these three plus these three relationships, this will be used for you to create your custom data models, and also this will be used to enhance your standard MMMPP or any data model. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is there any question?
There is data element at the relationship level also.
Yes. Okay, so that data element, what happens is, let's say for example, sometimes data element is there, right? So this type 3 or this type 3, at the type 3 level, we already maintained one data element, right? So that data element will be used for your qualification purpose and for the description, search help, everything, it will come from there. Okay, and when you make a reference relation or qualifying relation, the data element will be used for a particular entity. You have some 4 type 4s. For 4 type 4s, for out of 4 type 4s, for 3 type 4s, you need the data element or the properties from the this particular type 3 only. But out of all these, for one entity, one type 4, I need a different description or different search help or something, right? In that case, what you can do is you can actually just for that particular row, you just maintain your data element. So the search help or the description will pick up from there. So it will little bit confused. So that's why I didn't explain. So, but this is, if at all you need a different behavior, because now I maintain this reference relation or qualifying relation with multiple type 4s or type 1s. So you will find all the rows over here. Okay, but for one entity, I want a different behavior. So then you can assign a different data element for that one. So whatever you assign the data element over here, first preference will be given to that. If nothing is maintained, then it will take the data element from your type 3.
Okay, so simply it will overwrite the data element we given in the type 3.
Yeah, actually the thing is that if that is the case, instead of creating this using this type 3 and all these things, directly you can add that as a direct attribute under your entity and assign your data element that you need. So out of 4, 3 you can use this type 3, and for one directly add it as a normal attribute itself. So that can be done. So that's the reason actually this data element not much useful here, unless it will confuse you. But that
Okay.
is a significance here.
And also, can you explain little bit on cardinality? It's quite confusing.
No,
Many.
cardinality, always you remember for reference and qualifying, wherever you are using reference and qualifying, it's a 1:n relationship only. There is no doubt about that one. That change only with the leading relation. In case of leading relation, if you need one material, multiple plants, such kind of thing, you go with 1:n relationship. If it is one material and one SU type 1 side as well one, and an SU type 4 side as well only one key, then you always go with 1:1 relationship. That's the only thing. I'll show you that in the system. So what I will do is okay, now we are done with this type reference relation also, right? Now I'll show you something here, how you can interpret this data model, overview of the data model. So let's select your data model. There is something called visualize data model. Okay, now what happens is it shows you the complete hierarchy of your data model here. Just we'll try to interpret this. You have your one data model. Under data model, this is your main type 1 entity. Under this type 1 entity, you have one child. Okay, so this is under this one. Under type 1, you see this is the child. At the same time, this is the direct entity attribute itself, key field. So that's why this is ticked. So this staging table has these fields. Okay, but this is entity itself is one of the key fields. That's why you see this particular checkbox is ticked. These are the direct attributes. These are your text attributes. Of course, there is a one different staging table, but here it shows that overview. In overview, these are the description fields. Coming to your site entity, so what it says is, in the generated staging table, you see these two, but this is coming via leading relationship, and this is coming via qualifying relationship. Okay, and these are the direct, these two are the direct attributes. This is a coming from reference relationship. How do you know? Here reference entity type, as they mentioned, is a your type 3, the reference relationship. Okay, so this gives you like this is how you can, when you look at open this visualized data model, you will see the complete hierarchy of your model. Wherever you see this one, this reference entity type, that means the corresponding field got added under this entity via reference relationship. And wherever you see this qualifying, this is coming from another SU type 3 via qualifying relationship. This is coming from my leading relationship. And if everything is blank, nothing is there, then that means these are the direct attributes. That's how you need to interpret. Okay, now with this knowledge, let's go to data model also. Click on visualize data model. So let me close everything, collapse all. There are these many type ones are there under Okay, these type ones we don't use. I'll talk about later these type ones, but this is what our main type one, SU type one, material entity. When you expand this, it says that this attribute is the key attribute, your entity itself. Okay, storage use type is one, use type is one, and you see these are the normal direct attributes. At type 1 level also, there is something called EAN. So this attribute got added in your type 1 via reference relationship, and this is a SU type 3 entity. And all the remaining ones are the direct attributes. Under your type 1, you have these many attributes. Now, so as I said, let's take Mara cells. There is something called, wait, see. All these are the type 4s. You can see here, all these are the type 4s under your material entity. Okay, now here there is something called Mara storage. Mara, say this is Mara sales. There should be Mara sales. I just wanted to give an example. Yeah, this one. This is what I'm talking. Actually, if you this is a type 4. You see, this is a type 4 under your material entity. Now, when you expand this, there is no qualifying relationship for this one. Okay, what you have is only a leading relationship. Technically, in your Mara table, these attributes are from your Mara table. All these attributes are from your Mara table. Okay, so ideally these attributes should be part of your type 1. But SAP, they felt that okay, these are more relevant for the sales process. These are more relevant for your sales process. So they just created as a separate type 4 entity and just only maintained a leading relation. Here the key is only material, and you have all these attributes. You have all these attributes. Okay, and there will be one staging table. There is no qualifying relationship for this, and there is one staging table for this one, and one staging table for your type 1. But at the time of activation, all this data will go and sit in your Mara table. Okay. Okay. So any questions?
No, sure.
Is this clear to everyone? Okay, I think we discussed too many things today. So I'll just stop here today. And tomorrow we will discuss, I'll introduce that type 2 as well. Okay. And then there are some small settings are there, topics in data model. Maybe we can take some 15-20 minutes and we'll close the data model topic. And then we can get into UI.
Okay. For standard, we do not have qualifying at all, means in any other.
No, we have for standard. I'll show you that. Okay. So if you look at Marcy, right, one, see there is a leading and there is a qualifying.
Okay.
I'll explain. We'll explore the standard data models, how they designed as well, so that you will have an idea on the standard models.
Okay, thanks.
So, are you guys are able to follow? Do you think that it's initially these concepts are new to you, so little bit confusing, but I strongly recommend go through the recordings once and twice so that you will get familiar with all these terminologies and everything.
Also means we will get these transactions, right? Whatever we are used the list of transactions
Yeah, I will
in
share.
PPT.
I'll share. Yes, I will share.
Thanks.
Okay, if no questions, thank you all. We'll catch up tomorrow.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you, Akshay.
Thank you for attending the session. I hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also feel free to ask your questions in the comment section below, and we will reply to them at the earliest.